And how would they tell my mom? And how would my family find out? And that kind of snapped me out of it. And I was like, what, Erca, no, like snap out of it, woman. This is craziness. So luckily I was able to kind of snap out of it and moved on. I got out of that relationship. I got a new job, built up these friendships, and then kind of came into this, and I got back on medication because I had been off the medication. So I got back on medication, and so that kind of helped me dig myself out a little bit. And I found a therapist there. And then I kind of came into this I don't want to call it a manic state, but things were just going so well that it kind of scared me a little bit. And I was like, things are too good. Something's got to come down soon. Like this is too good to be true. And then maybe that was a little bit of self-sabotage, because then it kind of did. And I started to kind of feel the depression started coming back in. And I didn't ever get as low as I was that time when I was suicidal, but it was enough to have my oldest sister, who lives up in Alaska, be alarmed enough to say, I think you should get out of LA. And I didn't want to go back to Reno, and because I knew I would just get sucked back into that life that I had worked so hard to leave. And so she said, come up to Alaska and you can live with us and give it a try. And I thought about it for a day, and that's what brought me up there. And in that time that I've been up here, I've had a string of other abusive relationships. Luckily, never physically abusive. I'm thankful that I've never had to endure that. But mental and emotional abuse in a relationship is a real thing. And not even just a romantic relationship. My job that I had in LA was, there was total mental abuse happening at that job for my bosses. Like, it was so messed up. And so through the relationships I've had up here, like I said, one of them, I gained all that weight. It took me years to get that weight off. Two of the relationships I was in were with addicts. And so I didn't realize the severity of their addiction until I was kind of deep in the relationship. And then it's like, how do I get out now? And when someone's substance abuse is their top priority and you're not strong enough to recognize it or stand on your own 2 feet, it's easy to get swept away in that current. And so I've had, it's just up until maybe, it's been 2 years now that I got out of my last relationship, and that was like that. And it's taken me, it's taken me that long to recognize my worth and what I deserve, and that I'm not going to put up with anything less. And my road was long, and I had a lot of help on the way from family, from friends, from my therapist that I've had over the years. And so it wasn't anything that I did alone, and it was a lot of work, and it was really hard, but I knew there was something better, and I wanted to work for that.
And if I can jump in, I think all that points to a resilience now, right? So you have this series of unfortunate, and I had no idea about any of that. You and I haven't talked for ages, but all that says the next thing that comes that's horrible, like COVID-19, I can deal with that too. Because I can now point to this history that says it was awful and it sucked, and I'm okay, and I moved forward, and there's another day, right? And I think that's the inspirational message that we can all take from that testimony. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I was saying I think I said this in the text, and I said this to other people, was I really believe that everything that I've gone through prepared me for this, because I think if I didn't have those things, I would be in a much darker, deeper place. The last time I was in a really deep, dark place was just last year. And I had probably one of the worst years of my life in 2019. I had have an old back injury that ended up getting flared up again, and I couldn't work out for like 3 months. My kind of fun side job is I teach indoor cycle classes, and I couldn't teach the classes, which are something that it's very meaningful to me to have that outlet to help other people on their weight loss journey. And not even just weight, like you get a lot of emotional and physical release in those kind of classes. And so to help people motivate them through whatever journey they're on in their life has been something I found a lot of purpose in and a driving force for me. And so for me to not be able to do that and to have a fear that I didn't know if I ever would be able to, because with a back injury, you never really, it's not like I broke my collarbone, I've got 8 weeks to heal. I didn't know if my back was ever going to get better, if I was going to have surgery or anything. Luckily, I didn't. But so there was that coming into, it was like late February that happened. Then coming into the spring and summer, work is just insane. We've got 100 days to make our money, and we were short staffed. And so the demand and the stress was high at my job, and that started taking a toll. And my therapist was like, I know you don't want to get back on medication. I've been off medication for about 6 years at this point, 5 years. And she was like, I know you don't want to get back on, but I think you need to try something, just a low dose, temporary, to get you through this hump. If you don't, I've never seen you like this before. And I think you might end up admitted, like something's got to give. And so reluctantly I said, okay. And I went to see a psychiatrist, and we did a whole big evaluation when I went in, and I tried something different that I hadn't been on before. And it did not agree with me at all. Within 4 weeks, I was full blown suicidal. I mean, it was way worse than the time that I had when I was living in LA. But I could recognize that it was the medication, and I knew it wasn't me. And luckily, I was in a relationship at the time with this great guy who was super supportive. He took such good care of me in that time. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But and I thought if I could just push through to the 6-week mark, that's when your body is supposed to kind of normalize and get used to the medication. And I couldn't make it 6 weeks. I was like maybe 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks, and I just had to stop taking it. I was like, there's no way I can push through this and hope that it's better. And so, and in this time, so now I'm teaching cycle classes again. And it was excruciating leading up to the class. There's so much that goes into those classes of mapping them out, picking your music, making your playlist. You give so much to yourself in that class to hold that space for people to come in to work through their whatever they've got going on that day. And then you're totally depleted at the end. And so while I felt great after class, I had that endorphin boost. Within a matter of hours, I was just completely dead again. And but I will say that having that as something to, like, a responsibility and a commitment to that community that I needed and I wanted to show up for them, I think truly saved me last year. It was one of the biggest things that kept me going, and I'm so super grateful for that. And so by the fall, I had been off medication and started to kind of see the light a little bit, and it was a slow climb. But again, I knew that it could be better, and I just kept moving. That's kind of one of my things that I always tell people now, that over the past years that I've been talking about sharing my story more with people and letting them, people ask, well, what have you done? And my number one thing, aside from ask for help, is just keep moving.
Your Dory.
Totally. Like, we are not meant to sit idle. We are meant to move. Our bodies are meant to move, and you got to keep moving. And it goes back to those tiny steps, those tiny little changes. Like, it doesn't have to be you're training for a marathon. It doesn't have to be you're getting a crazy cardio sesh for 45 minutes. It can be a walk for 10 minutes a day. It can be something small. It can be cleaning your house. Maybe you clean your house a second time, even though you already just did it. Like, get a little bit deeper on those baseboards, and it's just something to keep you moving, so you're not sitting idle and you're not stewing in your thoughts, basically, because that's what's going to keep you spiraling down and unable to get out. And so, then I'd worked so hard, and I'd created this idyllic life that 2020, Jake, was going to be my year. Let me tell you what, I was so excited for this year. I had a ton of travel coming up. I hired more people at my job to help me, so I was going to be fully prepared going into this summer. I was ready for it. Cycle was going great. My back's feeling healed. I'm feeling strong and in shape, better than ever. And then, everything came to a literal halt with COVID, like it did for everyone. I was actually traveling when everything really started to hit the fan, and I had to cut a trip short and come home early. And then I had to just, then start going through everything that everybody else was going through. And looking back on last year specifically, how low I was like, man, if I can make it out of that, I can make it out of anything. And this quarantine is temporary. This way of life that we're in right now is temporary. I think you kind of talked about anxiety and fear, and that's when I actually have that written down, is the anxiety we're all having right now that can lead into the depression is the fear of the unknown. And we don't, nobody knows what's going to happen. And I think we're all kind of grieving a way of life that we used to have, whether we were enjoying it or we weren't enjoying it. Like I very much have been grieving a way of life and a lifestyle that I was super excited about and just loving life. And it's going to be different now. And that wasn't just one day I woke up. It's been over the course of the weeks of quarantine that I've been kind of exploring this and talking about it more, getting emotional about it. It's going through all the, I guess, stages of grief, really. And so, I keep drawing back on, if I can make it through last year, I can make it through quarantine. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I know the tools now that I need to use.
I got to be honest, I had no idea that this conversation would go the direction that it did. And I'm really thankful for it, because not only does it create a much deeper appreciation for you as a human being, but I think there's a lot of rich topic material in there for other people to draw from as well, and say, oh, I'm not alone. I've been in tough relationships. I've had abusive bosses. I've, gone through all those things. And if this gal can do it, then I probably can too, because there's an old saying that says, I learned this from my friend Christian Conti, who I've mentioned and has been on the podcast also. It says, if a human being has done it, it is therefore human nature. Therefore, anything any human being has done, you also, being a human, have it in your nature to do that thing. Mm-hmm. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think it's going to be really encouraging and motivating for other people who may be struggling as well. So I appreciate that. And I wanted to touch on one last thing, because I want to be mindful of your time. You got stuff to do, and my stomach is growling.
It is lunchtime.
You mentioned about like possible self-sabotage because you weren't sure how to handle things going so well. And I think that's a struggle that a lot of people have, not just with depressed mood, but also with addictions and bad habits and all sorts of things. When you really start turning that corner to make positive change and sustain it, the disorienting realization that you're stepping into what you want can almost be more intimidating than the misery that you're trying to leave. And I'm wondering, how are you dealing now with this new elevated realization that you're okay getting what you want? And I could paint I think I will actually paint an image for people listening. If you picture a graph, you got the x-axis, which is the one that goes vertically, and you've got like mood on that, or happiness, we'll call it happiness. And on the bottom, the y-axis, you have time. So across time, maybe you're fluttering down in the low range of not being super happy, or maybe your mood's a little low. And then you start climbing. And we have mood swings. Everybody has mood swings. So you go up and down and up and down. But over time, that baseline starts moving higher and higher along the x-axis, and you get happier and happier. You maybe start at a 2 or whatever, and you're at a 2.5 for years. But then eventually you turn around and you go, wow, I'm at a 6. And I'm at a 6 consistently. It can seem really odd. How are you making peace with that new way of being happy, not being on medication, not needing the medication, finding your own personal liberty and freedom, and just really embracing joy? How do you make peace with that?
I think I've been able to see all of my experiences as a stepping stone to where I am now, and to, I guess, recognize that was the path that I was supposed to be on, and I find a lot of gratitude in it. I think because I've had these high highs and then had that kind of taken away. It's humbling,
Gives you perspective. Yeah.
But you also know what it is out there and like what you're capable